Oh, looks like I'm rolling there. Getting ready to jump on the air here. So, hello, Facebook. Seems like we've changed our music. How about that? Who knew? Hi. Broadcasting live from a palatial palace sitting atop Grove Hill on the west side of Big Brother City in the heart of Plantation County in a formerly free state where, sadly, 26,000 babies have been murdered in the womb so far this year. I'm Troy Skinner, and this is Frederick's Forum. We're on the air at 930 WFMD, online at WFMD.com, on the FM at 99.9 HD2. You can enter the conversation by dialing 301-694-WFMD. That's 301-694-9363. That same number is used for the WFMD text line. And by the way, we're also streaming live right now on Facebook. If you want to jump over there, you can see me as I talk as opposed to just hear me as I talk. We got a lot of ground to cover because I had an insight today that is rather striking, a historical parallel that might help us figure out where these things are going and why where we are right now, this crossroads that we're standing at right now, is so critically important. But let me start with this. This is courtesy of a guy I've recently stumbled upon on social media, Tom Woods. He does his own show and his own kind of stuff too, and he's got some good stuff. Anyway, he shared that the governor of Nevada, Steve Sisolak, I think that's how you say it, he recently scolded the citizens of his state, blaming irresponsible behavior for a rise in COVID cases in that state. Does that sound familiar if you live in Maryland or one of the other dictatorial states right now? Now this governor is telling the Nevadans that they have 2 weeks to get things under control, warning, I'm not going to come back in 2 weeks and say, I'm going to give you another chance. He's daddy now, right? He's going to send you to your room without dinner. But then right after he said this, 3 days later, the governor, he himself tested positive for COVID-19. So is he going to treat himself now like he's a 7-year-old? Scold himself for his irresponsible behavior the way that he did his constituents? Apparently not, because the governor was forced to admit, quote, you can take all the precautions that are possible and you can still contract the virus. I don't know how I got it. End quote. Huh. I guess virus gonna virus. And the governor here, he's not alone. Just the other day, former Secretary of Education for the United States, Arne Duncan, he posted the following: how did we catch it? I don't know. We wore masks. We socially distanced. We avoided crowds. We haven't had people in our house. End quote. Huh. Who knew you couldn't control a virus? And never mind the countless lives lost by the lockdown itself. Those lives don't seem to count for some reason. Plus we have families and friendships being torn apart over all of this. You're a bad person if you reject the propaganda. If you recognize it as propaganda, which it is, and so you reject it because it's propaganda, well, you just don't care about saving lives. You are selfish. Common sense says that we can either accept the truth, which means simply taking steps to protect those among us who are most at risk, those in the nursing homes and those with compromised immune systems in hospital settings, things like that. And the rest of us should resume our lives. It's the one and only life each of us is given. And if we don't do that, we are destroying the social fabric of our culture, of our society. I mean, it's far past time to admit that the current state of lockdown science appears to be, we have no idea what we're doing, but hey, if it's something that brings people pleasure, we should probably limit it or prohibit it. And if it's something that causes great inconvenience or even pain, well then we should probably do that. It's bizarro world. Everything's upside down, inside out. This is in spite of what would seem to be good news that even the mainstream sources are providing. The New York Times had a story this week that immunity to coronavirus that might last 17 years or more. So once you've gotten infected with the virus, you're immune It's like self-vaccination, if you will. But let's ignore that. And by ignoring that, another headline from this week, 17,000 Marylanders have applied for unemployment benefits in the last week. 17,000 in 1 week. Why? Because we're living in la la land. It's a fantasy and we're pretending it's real. It's all too real for these people that are affected. But hey, we don't care about them. We care about our own ill-founded fears. You want to travel and visit your family for Thanksgiving? Better check every state's website and see what their travel restrictions are. There's lengthy lists of restrictions in the states that are close enough for us to drive to from where I am here in Frederick. Virginia's got a lengthy list of restrictions. Kentucky, Tennessee, Washington, D.C., Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Delaware. Big list of restrictions in what used to be, the land of the free and the home of the brave. But again, this is in spite of what the news would say is good news. I think it's bizarre, made up kind of fantasy news, but it's good news nonetheless. It's good fantasy news. If you saw this, India, they have a new paper test for COVID-19 that they say is a huge step forward. Team of scientists over in India, they have this paper-based test that gives results for coronavirus very quickly, like within a day or two, kind of like a pregnancy test almost. Like it's like almost instant. I guess it's instant testing. It's called Feluda, if you want to look that up. I think that's how you say it, F-E-L-U-D-A. Anyway, they're saying, if we can trust them, they're saying this new test has a 96% sensitivity and a 98% specificity. So what does that mean? Apparently that means that it's highly sensitive, so it will detect almost everyone who has the disease, and the test, because of its specificity, it will correctly rule out almost everyone who doesn't have the disease. Sounds good, right? Except here's the nutty part. Do you see how nuts this is? We're trying to test for and identify a disease with no illness, no symptoms, no problems. This is like going to a hypnotist, You're getting sleepy, your eyelids are heavy. No, I'm not tired at all. I'm full of energy. No, you're not. No, you're not. Our tests tell us otherwise. It's pure mysticism, total fantasy. And yet, because we insist on living within this fantasy, the panic is running amok again. We're in a second wave of food stockpiling right now. Did you know that this month alone there's been a reported 3,400% surge in pantry item purchases? 3,400%. Companies like General Mills, they say that they don't expect inventories to normalize until at least next June, because consumers are still buying up as much as they can because they're panicked. Which, by the way, good for you. I'm not saying you should be panicking about all the food, but you need to recognize that everyone around you is panicked. They bought into this lie, and they're panic shopping. So if you want to provide for your family, you better go buy some toilet paper while you can, get some canned goods while you can. Gotta provide for your family. Maybe start a garden in the backyard. Now is a good time to get prepared to do that next spring, beginning next spring. You might have to grow your own food. Seriously, start taking steps. Because everybody's lost their mind. If you're going to sit around and wait for people to come back to their senses, I think that boat sailed. They should have come back to their senses a long time ago, and they haven't. So when are they going to? I don't think they are. That's my concern. So you got to do what you can to provide for your family, even protect your family. How you doing on ammo? Saw a story this week about the price of ammo. Holy cow. Ammunition that used to cost something like 18 cents a round is now well over $1 a round or something. We're talking about a 5-10-fold increase in price. Wow. And that's only going to lead to people practicing less because they don't want to spend so much money at the range, and then they're going to be getting a little rusty on their skills, and we're going to have more accidents perhaps. I'm not predicting that. I'm hoping that's not true, but it feels like that would be a logical potential outcome. And it's interesting, you see the reports coming out of the news about inflation. I just mentioned the cost of the bullets, like how that's gone way up. Well, overall inflation isn't so bad. You know, it's, I don't know, 1.5%, something like that, I think is what I saw reported. That doesn't sound so bad, right? That's probably a pretty healthy rate of inflation. The problem is, it's all out of whack. So you can't trust that overall number because the price of the stuff that you're needing to buy is rising really fast. And the stuff that you no longer want to buy or need to buy or have any interest in buying, that's dropping like a rock. So, does it matter if you buy a new suit or a fancy dress? No, you're not buying that. You don't need to buy that. You can't go anywhere anyway. So the prices for that, that's down about 20%. So what? Price of makeup is down. Price of hotel rooms is down. Airline tickets are down about like 25%, something like that. Well, you're not saving 25% on an airline ticket if you never buy an airline ticket, and nobody's traveling anymore. When I say nobody, that's obviously hyperbole to make the point. Economists are also concerned that city centers and commercial property are going to suffer in the long run. Hello? Yeah, you think so? And when that happens, it's going to leave a lot of workers to find new home for their work, find a new job. And it's interesting, we had a story locally in Frederick about they're going to come down harder now on these abandoned buildings in Frederick, you know, to force them to do something with the properties. How can they do something with the properties when you've slammed shut the economy? Nobody's going to rent those buildings when they can't open a business in them. Or even if you lifted the restrictions and all of a sudden allowed the economy to open, how is there going to be an entrepreneurial spirit left? I'm going to take a chance and open a business knowing full well that it's very possible, I would say likely, that at some point the government's going to slam my business shut on me. Who's going to take? So what's going to happen? They're going to fine and tax people to death on these buildings, and I'm all for eliminating blight and having a strategy there, but I'm thinking the long-term play on this is that over time the city will take over these buildings that can't have occupants because of economic damage that's been done. So the government's going to own more and more of the private property. And if the government keeps on financing more stimulus, these prices, this inflation, it's just going to continue to rise. And as that happens, it's going to be a serious problem for investors, you would think. I mean, the stock market's made no sense this year, so I don't pretend to understand what dynamics are at play. I mean, we're at near all-time highs in spite of everything. But how long? I think that people are pumping funny money into the stock market and propping it up. It can't be legitimate. Seriously? How could it be legitimate? How long can this farce be, this illusion be maintained? I don't know. And then imagine if the so-called second wave of COVID-19 is followed by a third. Huh? How heavy will the job losses be then? We have the government trying to control the uncontrollable. They're messing with the free market. They're redistributing wealth. They're picking winners and losers. They're crushing Main Street family-owned businesses. This whole thing is like allowing preteens to experiment unsupervised in the chemistry lab. Seriously. I just mentioned, that they're picking winners and losers and redistributing wealth. I mean, just within the last week or so, headline, Hogan announces, as governor of Maryland, announces additional $70 million for virus response allocated for rental assistance and food banks and such. And in Frederick County, Chief Executive Officer here for the county executive, Jan Gardner. She's announced additional aid is on the way for child care, food service, things like that. So they're coming to the rescue to solve problems that they caused. And so how are they going to solve these problems? People are hurting. I'm not denying that. People are hurting big time. And they're not hurting big time because of the virus. They're hurting big time because of the government. The government has put the screws to people. And now the people that are most challenged and struggling most heartily in all of this and need the most help, the government's now going to take money from everybody else who's not struggling quite so bad to help take care of that and cause those people then to struggle more. there's a connection historically that I want to make before this show is out. Maybe I'll begin to make that case here after we have this this moment to hear from important businesses in town who are doing the best they can to hang on and provide goods and services to you. So if you would, listen up and see if you can't help these fine folks. Let's see, I'm not going to see if there's any comments. It's hard for me to scroll. I'm afraid I'm going to knock this down. Looks like we've got a few people. Bill, hey. Jace, hey. Jonathan, hey. If there's others, I'm sorry. I'm afraid to touch my camera too much. I don't want to knock it down.
Here at Glenn Beck Live, weekday mornings at 9 on Free Talk, 930 WFMD.
And even though I'm doing this on Facebook Live, I'm not really using Facebook anymore. I'm using the live function because I haven't found a suitable replacement for Facebook Live. As soon as I find one, I'll switch to that live stream service. I haven't found one that's better as far as the censorship and all that garbage than Facebook. So right now I'm using their live feature. I'll be using it again tonight at 6 o'clock. So you can catch me on Facebook Live, but for regular posts and regular social media interaction, you should try to find me on MeWe, which is pretty similar to Facebook. It's not exactly the same, but it's similar enough. It's kind of a replacement for Facebook. And then Parler, which a lot of people have left Facebook for Parler, which is interesting because Parler is is very little like Facebook. It's more like Twitter, but I'm there too. And for what it's worth, it took me, I don't know how many years of being on Facebook to get to approximately 800 quote-unquote friends on Facebook. I've got more than that now following on Parler. So I'm connecting to more people on Parler within the last few months than I was able to do over the course of years on Facebook. So, making the shift in strategy, and I'm gaining ground on MeWe. It's been slower there, but it's beginning to gain some ground there too. So, sorry, I gotta get my head back in the game here for the show. This is the forum on 930 WFMD, Free Talk, 930 WFMD at WFMD.com. I'm Troy Skinner. Thank you for spending your lunch hour with me here on this beautiful Saturday. Nice crisp air, good day for a walk, maybe getting some yard work done, perhaps cutting the grass for the last time. If you may, I'm hoping perhaps the last time. It's that time of the year when you don't have to hopefully cut the grass quite so often. We're walking through things that are related to COVID-19 and all that, and we're going to talk about the election too here. I'm going to try to, I had this insight, this connection, this historical connection in my mind that really I think could be helpful. And I'm going to share that here in a second. Let me finish going through. I've got a short segment here before a bottom of the hour news and information update, and then a longer segment after that. So let me get through some of these highlights in the news in recent days, last week or week and a half or so, and just try to connect some dots and then come on and make the historical connection that I want to make. So this headline reads, a CDC report says that young adults are impacted by the pandemic in huge ways. 25% of young adults, meaning those between the ages of 18 and 24, 1 out of 4, people in their late teens and early 20s, 1 in 4 have had thoughts about suicide since June. Research stated that these young adults, spit that out, reported at least one mental or behavioral health condition, such as anxiety, depression, trauma, increased use of substance abuse, in other words. A Delphi Behavioral Health Group, that's a Maryland detox house, they say that since the pandemic began, they've seen a significant increase of young adults checking in their facility. Yeah, that was predicted, by the way. Shouldn't be a surprise, but is anybody listening? Are the elected representatives listening? County executives, governors, others? How about business owners, business managers? Are you listening? All of this farcical stuff is causing real damage. But we pretend that everything's going to get back to normal, whatever normal is, soon enough. Right? Frederick County Public Schools, they said that, well, they're aiming at a hybrid model for the second semester, beginning to get back to something kind of like normal for the second semester, barring any spikes, barring any upward trends. But you know there's going to be spikes and trends. They're just telling you what you want to hear, or maybe what they need to hear themselves say. Board of Education voted for a return to sports in Frederick County. It's interesting because 2 months ago, Dr. Randall Culpepper, he said that there was no way that he would have signed off on kids playing high school sports 2 months ago. There's no way he would have signed off on that just 2 months ago. So what's changed? Nothing's changed, other than he says, well, thinking on the subject has evolved. We have all evolved in our understanding and acceptance of risks. So nothing in fact has changed, just your opinion has changed. And those who had a different opinion than yours, maybe those who share the opinion that you have now, but they had it 2 months ago, they were dangerous. Now you come along to their way of thinking, come around to their way of thinking. It's like, oh, well, yeah, that we can change your thinking on this. You're being played. You are being played. Did you happen to see His Majesty the King Larry Hogan's COVID-19 mass vaccination plan? You know, he's talking about 2 phases. Phase 1 focuses on priority groups that are going to receive the vaccination. Now, I think the way it's stated is they're going to be allowed to receive the vaccination, but I'm wondering, are they going to have to get the vaccination? This first round would be, first responders and healthcare workers, people who work at nursing homes, things like that. Anybody that's quote-unquote essential, ignoring the fact that all jobs are essential from a certain perspective. But are they going to have a choice? Or is it going to be like the mask mandates? Well, you don't have to get the vaccine, but if you don't get the vaccine, you got to quit your job. Now, phase 2 is going to have the vaccine available to the general public. But again, is there going to be a phase 3 where the general public is going to not be opting in, but be forced to get a vaccination? Is vaccination mandates coming? A year ago, he said, "Are you kidding? They'll never do that." Well, a year ago, he said, they'll never force businesses to close. They'll never force churches to change the way that they worship. They would never do that. This is America. They would never force people to wear a mask on their face. Never. And yet they have. Now, this isn't the biggest thing, but I wanted to mention it. It's more of a sideline story. I made a connection here, 2 headlines that I saw in rapid succession, and it struck me as interesting. Store closings and bankruptcy cases are piling up big time, particularly for business wear retailers during this whole COVID-19 nonsense. So are dress clothes gone for good? That's what the headline asks. Maybe dress clothes are gone for good because you don't go anywhere. Why dress up? And then this very next story that I happened to see says, COVID-19 causes rise in cannabis consumption. Now, it's not COVID-19 that's causing that, okay? It's the panic caused from the propaganda that's leading to a rise in cannabis consumption. Let's be straight about that. But interesting. Everybody's dressing down, right? We're all dressing like slobs now because you don't go anywhere. And we're all getting high, right? You know what this means? Hippie culture has won. The hippie culture has won. But it's a certain kind of a hippie culture. It's a hippie culture that is blended with some sort of a fascist undergirding. Oh, man. And here's an example of that. Maryland residents. People in Maryland, maybe it's other places too, but I know at least in Maryland, you can get COVID-19 exposure notifications through your smartphone. Do you hear about this? You can download a Maryland COVID alert application for your phone. So I guess this is kind of like the Waze app that people use for traffic information. They use that to get alerts to dangers, up ahead on the road, like accidents or speed traps that are up ahead, things like that. Well, there's a difference with this MD COVID alert app. It's a pretty big difference, at least one big difference, because this has you alerting others that you are a danger. You're not learning about other things that are dangerous up ahead. You're telling people to avoid you. gosh. What are we doing to ourselves? Why are so many people not seeing it, and then so many who are seeing it just going along with the flow? And I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but I'm up against a timeout for news and information, so we're going to do that. Again, I'm Troy Skinner. This is Frederick's Forum. Thanks for listening to the Talk of Mid-Maryland, 930 WFMD.
This is 930 WFMD and WFMD.com. Now, WFMD News.
4 individuals have been identified in a series of burglaries and thefts in the region
Let's
between
see, who
November
else might
6th
be on
and
here? Anybody?
17th.
Let's see.
The Frederick County Sheriff's Office said it
It's
worked
not
with
alerting me to
Frederick
everybody who's
County
jumping on, I don't think, unless somebody's jumped on and back off again. And I'm not going to be able to interact with...
Brian Lowe of Hagerstown. All 3 are behind bars at the Adult Detention Center.
I'm not sure if I'll be able to react with the comments on there or not, but I'll try. And if I don't react during the show, I'll try to react to the comments later. Although to be honest, I'm not doing a whole lot of interaction on Facebook. But and if you're interested, I'm going to later on post this video on YouTube, so it has a permanent, easy to find place, because Facebook is it's hard to find videos after they've been available for a while. Good luck finding a video that somebody posted like a month ago, for example. So putting it on a YouTube channel makes it easier. So I'm going to put it there, if not today, before the weekend is out, I would expect. Let's see.
Circle, where a Buick LeSabre operated by Deborah Snelson was traveling eastbound. She attempted to turn left into a local business where her vehicle was struck on the passenger side by 2 motorcycles. The operators of the bike were identified as Christopher Sowers and Mike Campotisi. They were injured. One was flown by state police helicopter, the other transported by ambulance. Snelson was released from the scene. Route 40 near Overlook Circle was closed for a period of time while troopers conducted their investigation. The City of Hagerstown's annual City Center tree lighting event will take place virtually on November 23rd. It will be live streamed on the city's social media platforms and broadcast on its cable channel between 5 and 6 p.m. I'm Diana Gibson on the Maryland's News Radio Center, 930 WFMD.
2.5 minutes probably.
News, I'm Karen McHugh. Speculation building regarding who will serve in a Biden White House cabinet. This Maryland lawmaker says it'll be reflective of America.
I think he will appeal to the broad categories of support that he got during his campaign. 80 million votes almost. That's a broad sector of America. It's hard to pinpoint exactly one particular group that he needs to make sure are represented here or there. He's got to represent this country.
Democratic Senator Ben Cardin on Fox. Meanwhile, amid a flurry of lawsuits, President Trump is still showing no signs of conceding.
The president's campaign firing off a note to supporters at 7 this morning, still casting doubt on the election results, and the president has been hinting all along that he still sees himself as a winner, including via a tweet. The president writing this, quote, "Big voter fraud coming out of Georgia concerning Georgia. Stay tuned."
Fox's Mark Meredith. America is listening to Fox News. Forecast for Frederick and the surrounding counties for this afternoon. Partly sunny, high around 64. Tonight we do have a slight chance of rain or drizzle after midnight, mostly cloudy, low 43. Tomorrow Sunday, a slight chance of rain or drizzle, mostly cloudy, high 55. Sunday night, a chance of showers, cloudy, low around 46. Monday, a slight chance of showers, sunny, high 55.
Sorry for all the downtime here, but if I don't have my thoughts gathered, I sound like more of a bumbling idiot than I already do, so...
Our lives have been turned upside down by COVID-19. Families and friends are facing challenges like never before, which at times are leading to thoughts of suicide, caused by the loss of a loved one or a livelihood. But there's a way forward in Frederick County. If you or others you know are struggling with thoughts of suicide, call 211 or visit overcometogether.org. Together.
Frederick's Forum on 930 WFMD. Shows the running chief officers in downtown Frederick and Frederick Air, Bryant's National Dealer of the Year. Now, our local Free Talk News continues on 930 WFMD.
Thanks for listening to the Forum. I'll be on the air again tomorrow morning for the Faith Debate, 9 to 9:30. I'm going to be talking with the director and writer of a new movie that just came out. In fact, watched it last night. It's available on Amazon Prime. If you have Amazon Prime, you can watch it for free. It's part of your Prime theme. And ooh, New music just kicked in from out of nowhere. Wow, that was fun. Couldn't have to dance. So the movie was kind of like a Hallmark Channel kind of a movie, you know. So if you're into some really, you know, easy going, calm. I mean, there's a little bit of tension as if there's a, you know, family argument that takes place that might make you a little bit unsettled, I suppose. But it's generally kind of G-rated material. Miracle on Christmas, it's called. It's also available, I think, at Target and Walmart, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly. So you can check that out. I'll be talking with the director and writer of that movie tomorrow morning from 9 to 9:30. So you just heard the news update, and I wasn't going to necessarily go in this direction. I just got to mention, it's so exemplary of the challenges that we face in this facts don't matter world anymore. It's all about the propaganda. Everybody is talking about, you know, the election that President Trump lost, and talking about President-elect Joe Biden. Now, that may prove out to be the case eventually. I'm convinced that if it plays out to be that way eventually, it'll be because someone was successful in stealing an election. But for now, whether it's by fraud or whether it's legit or not, the election hasn't been decided. We don't have a winner or loser yet. The votes haven't been certified. We don't actually have a president-elect. There are legal challenges all over the place. If you're not going to see it on the major news outlets because they're part of the problem here, but if you're willing to dig and go to some secondary and tertiary kinds of sources, people are willing to put information out there for you to make of it what you will. If you're willing to go to those places, I mean, it seems overwhelming. We got thousands of dead people voting, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands perhaps of ballots that shouldn't be legally recognized as votes. They weren't signed, or there's other sorts of problems with it. And we've got, I'm persuaded, millions of extra votes that were counted that shouldn't be through the mail-in voting farce. And the appearance that it looks like maybe votes were digitally switched from one candidate to the other, perhaps by the millions. We don't know. So this isn't known yet. Now, I will say, my read of it is that President Trump has about a 20% chance of hanging on and winning this thing, which means that Joe Biden has an 80% chance. So the odds are against righteousness winning out. So, and if righteousness doesn't win out, holy cow. And I'm going to talk about that more in just a second. But I want to highlight some things that are related to what I was talking about right before the news break. There's a horrific trend of domestic violence. That's a headline for an editorial in the local newspaper. Horrific trend of domestic violence because of all the shutdowns. That's what's leading to that trend. Another headline. Tens of thousands, or this isn't a headline, another story. I'm not going to read the headline because I want to jump into the story here. Tens of thousands of people, of the elderly, have died succumbing not from COVID-19, not from coronavirus, succumbing to the neglect or the social isolation that they feel because of all the restrictions that have been placed. But their lives don't matter, right? Your life only matters if you're going to die from COVID-19. It doesn't matter if you're going to die from something else. This is what we're told. So we're led, and if you disagree with what we're told, then you're a heretic. You're a social heretic, and you will be canceled. Worldwide, talked about this a couple weeks ago, mentioned it again. Multiple countries now talking about an alarming rise in hunger. There's a hunger crisis that rings louder than it has in years. We had beaten back significantly the hunger problem on this planet over the last couple of decades. It's been amazing to watch. And now we're giving all that back. And we're having people starve to death because we're shutting down our economies. But those lives, people that starve to death, that doesn't matter. Unless they starve to death with COVID-19, then it matters. But if you starve to death without COVID-19, your life doesn't matter. That's the narrative. It's so frustrating. Here's something that has nothing to do with that, but it transitions now into something I've been teasing since the start of the show. In Frederick City, and I didn't see the end result of this. I neglected to look up and say, I'm assuming it passed. Frederick City Alderman we're looking to change the rules for consumption of alcohol on city property. Has been a criminal offense. They're talking about switching it to a civil offense. Well, I guess that's good, right? The ordinance would prohibit if they passed it, it will prohibit the possession of alcoholic beverages in open containers in a park or in other city property. Now I say it's good if they've stopped it from being a criminal offense, because these sorts of laws should have never existed, so it certainly shouldn't be a criminal offense, but it shouldn't be a civil offense either. I mean, if you're walking around holding a beverage, whatever kind of beverage it is, you're walking around holding a beverage, who are you hurting? This shouldn't be a criminal offense, and it shouldn't be a civil offense. It shouldn't be any sort of offense at all. And yet, we've had these sorts of laws forever. It's become part of our tradition. Somebody answers, oh, Troy, they've always done that. What's wrong with you? Get with it, man. This isn't new. Exactly. It leads to the point I'm going to make here in a second. And we've got this problematic thing going on. Did you know that top United States universities have been massively underreporting the funding that they accept from China and Russia and other foreign adversaries? The feds are trying to crack down on this fraudulent underreporting because they have concerns about economic espionage and trade secret theft from abroad. Now these schools, you've heard of them. They include schools like Harvard and Yale and Stanford and Georgetown. Apparently schools like this, they have failed to report billions of dollars in gifts and contracts from sources in China and Russia and Saudi Arabia and Qatar. And at least one of the schools has ties directly to the Chinese Communist Party. But that sort of graft and, money under the table and not reporting what you're supposed to do, that's normal, right? Get with it, Troy. I mean, yeah, the feds, they might be concerned that competing nations they're increasingly targeting U.S. colleges to steal our research and our technology, but this has gone on forever. Nothing to see here. Don't worry about it. It's our tradition. It's what we do. All right, so here's the historical connection that I've been teasing, that I had this insight, I feel like, today. Because there's nothing new under the sun. Yeah, you could say, oh, this is unprecedented. Yeah, specific details may be unprecedented, but the bigger issues, the things at play, there's nothing new under the sun. If it's happening now, it's happened before. When has something like this happened before? And it hit me today. The Reformation. Now, if you're not a big student of church history or Western civilization history, really, because the Reformation is not just a church history issue, it's a massive happening in world history. Now, if you do understand the theological questions and arguments and stuff, then you know that the big theological issue there was justification by faith alone versus justification by faith plus works. Okay, that's the big theological thing that was going on there. That was at the center of the issues. But closely tied to this, and super important to this, the battle over authority. Where do we find authority? Is the authority in the written word, or is authority found in men and their traditions? That was right at or near the crux of the issue for the Reformation that took place. Now, in religious terms, it was the written word of the Bible versus the authority of the Roman Catholic Church, or the traditions of the Roman Catholic Church superseding any authority from the written word on the pages of the Bible. That was central. And it relates to our situation that we're happening right now. Think about this. You've heard of Martin Luther, I'm assuming. You may or may not know this about Luther, but he was a rather crass and vulgar individual. He was insulting, and he was counter to the societal norms. Today we would call him politically incorrect. He was foul-mouthed, man. He was bombastic. He was argumentative. He was, in a lot of ways, a rough dude. Sound familiar? Crass, vulgar, insulting, politically incorrect, accused of being foul-mouthed or perhaps even being foul-mouthed on occasion. bombastic, argumentative, sound like anybody in our contemporary situation? Like Donald Trump, for example? Now, I'm not saying that Donald Trump is a saint. Not even going to argue that Donald Trump is a Christian or not. That's between Donald Trump and God, right? I don't need to make that determination right now. He's not a member of my church. I don't have to worry about that. But the similarities are striking. Luther, in my opinion, was right. All the Protestants think Luther was right. Not about every little nuance of his theology, but generally speaking, broadly speaking, he was right. Now, Roman Catholics, they think he was wrong. Okay, that's fine. We could agree to disagree. So what happened in that agreeing to disagree? They couldn't agree to disagree. And so what commenced was a civil war in the church. Now, the civil war isn't what the Protestants wanted. They were trying to reform the church and rescue the church and get it back to its foundation on the written word on the page. In that case, the Bible. They were trying to get back to that written word being the norm, being the authority. But the Pope and the Roman Catholic hierarchy at the time said, yeah, no, I'm sorry. No. Our traditions and the dogma that's been instituted by the church traditionally, that's what's going to carry the authority here. That's just like what's happening now. Except in our political discourse, it's not about the Bible, it's about the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Is our authority to be found in the Constitution and the guaranteed protections of God-given rights that are found there in our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution? Or are they be found in these traditions? Traditions that say, yeah, you can make it illegal to carry a beverage around a city park. Where's that in the Constitution? Or, well, now we have a new tradition. The new tradition is the government can tell your business is shut down when it wants to, when it deems it's necessary. The government can force you to wear a mask around your face, even when there's research that shows those masks cause more damage than the good that they do. Now, if you're in a particular situation and you need to be protected, and you need to protect others, and you're wearing an N95 for a short period of time in that context, yeah, absolutely. The research shows that works. I believe that that's true. I have no qualms with that. But to wear the same mask all day long, or to not wear an N95 mask, that's not fighting the virus the way that you think it is. But what it is doing is it's signaling fear. It's signaling compliance to tyranny. And that compliance to the tyranny and that fear induces panic and forlornness, gives rise to depression and suicide and spousal abuse and substance abuse, a rise in heart attacks because there's more stress-induced illnesses now because of everything that's going on. The masks are causing huge harm. And everybody keeps telling people like me, oh, if you don't wear the mask, you're not loving your neighbor. I'm telling you, it's the exact opposite. You wearing your mask is not loving your neighbor. You're doing harm to your neighbor. And you insisting that I wear a mask is you insisting that I do harm to my neighbor. Why would I want to do harm to my neighbor? Why would you insist that I do that? Oh, I don't see it that way. Okay, why can't we agree to disagree? There is an argument to be had on both sides. But only one side gets to have the argument go their way, because we live in propaganda land now. Either everybody's already been brainwashed and has given into Stockholm syndrome, or they recognize it's not true, or it's not likely to be true. It's probably not. It's probably not everything they say it is. But I'm not going to worry about it so much. We're gonna have to compromise. Go along to get along. The American religion is really the religion of pragmatism. That's the American religion. It is what it is. It's not based upon any standard of right and wrong. It's just relativism. It is what it is. From a Christian perspective, this stands in diametric opposition to the Bible, where it's all about I am who I am. It's what God says. It's not it is what it is. It's I am who I am. That's a biblical truth based upon the character of God as a perfect standard, unchanging. It's the basis for what is and must be. Now, I'm not putting the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence on a par, not even close, to the Bible. But in our cultural, societal, political landscape in America, there's a bit of a correlation there. We're going to ignore all that. We're going to ignore what that says. And we're going to compromise ourselves into oblivion. We're going to talk about what that means here in the final moments I have on the show. Coming up next on the Forum on 930 WFMD.
As a public service, News Radio 930 WFMD brings you statements from state and local officials pertaining to the coronavirus pandemic.
Over the past 8 months, and it has been 8 months that we've been in this pandemic, I have given regular updates on the health pandemic so that people who live and work in Frederick County could have the latest information and data and public health guidance so that all of you can make informed choices about how to protect yourselves, your families, your employees, and the community from the coronavirus. Unfortunately, too many people in our community and beyond have grown tired of following the guidance, or in some cases have chosen not to believe the data. And I really want to say to people the coronavirus is real, the health metrics are real, and it is very concerning. And I'm here to raise an alarm today and to really tell folks that you need to follow the public health guidance.
We will keep you updated on breaking news from Mid-Maryland's Radio News Center, 930 WFMD.
It's apple season at Catoctin Mountain Orchard. Favorites including Crimson Crisp, Fuji, Gala, Stamen, Empire, and Pink Lady. In the market, you'll find Boss, Sentinel, and Corn pears, along with cauliflower, turnips, cabbage, and kale. Be sure to pick up jugs of their apple cider and take family photos with their pumpkin tree. 15 minutes from Frederick, north on Route 15. You can't miss it. Fresh fruit for better health at Catoctin Mountain Orchard. Visit online at CatoctinMountainOrchard.com.
We have about 6 minutes. I probably got about 15 minutes worth of stuff I still wanted to say, but we'll do the best we can with the time allotted. Chris Murray, who is your financial editor, is up next in about, 10, 15 minutes thereabouts here on News Radio 930 WFMD and WFMD.com and 99.9 FM HD2. Also streaming live on Facebook today. So I mentioned that, we're going to compromise ourselves into oblivion. So what we have coming ahead of us is we have assuming that Donald Trump does not end up winning the election and the election is stolen, because that's what it would be. In my opinion, any opinion of anybody who's really looking at all of the information, that's the only opinion you can draw, to be honest. If that happens, if the election is stolen, then there's no confidence in the electoral process anymore. And that can lead to one of three outcomes. Secession. Different states or parts of states and try to secede from their state and from the federal government. Or civil war, and I mean by that, we have a civil war right now, but I'm talking about a hot civil war, a violent civil war. We've had some indicators of that this past summer with people on the radical left going absolutely ape. Well, that's going to be taken as a racist. I didn't mean it as a racist comment, by the way. It's just a turn of phrase. So if you're offended, I apologize, not meaning to offend your sensibilities. And the third thing is complete capitulation to communism. That would be the other option. Secession, civil war, capitulation to communism. Those are the choices. The best of those is probably secession, right? So, and that's what ended up happening. I was talking about this historical correlation. That's what happened with the Reformation. When Martin Luther triggered everything almost exactly 500 years ago. Almost exactly 500 years ago, our Western culture was in a similar situation, driven by what was going on theologically. And this is a theological question, too. I'm not going to get into all that now. We talk about these sorts of things on the Faith Debate Show. But he wanted to have the right thing win out. But he wasn't successful in changing the Roman Catholic Church for what in his mind was the good. And so they agreed to disagree. But they didn't really agree to disagree. And so what commenced was a civil war in the church. It's not what the Protestants wanted, but they had no choice. And persecution of Protestants, it lasted hundreds of years. This persecution of the Protestants actually led in a pretty direct way to the founding of our nation, Now, Luther was right, in my opinion, and all the Protestants' opinion. Now, Roman Catholics disagree. Okay, that's fine. But from Protestants' perspective, Luther was right. But he was punished for being right. And the others who agreed with him were punished for being right for hundreds of years. So that's what could be on the horizon for us. It seems like it probably is at some level. Cancel culture is real. You get canceled on social media. You can get canceled right out of your job. If you're not going to toe the line with the fabricated propaganda that's out there, hey, if you're not going to play along and pretend, if you don't want to pretend that you're insane like everybody else is insane, sorry, you're out of luck. That's the world we live in now. Because it's positioned as, oh, well, if you're not going to agree, well, you're not being a good global citizen. If you want to be a good global citizen, well, you have to wear your mask. When the exact opposite is what's actually true. I don't care if the majority opinion is that. The majority opinion in Nazi Germany wasn't right. The majority opinion among the ruling class in China today is not right. The majority doesn't always get it right. Majority gets it wrong, actually, a lot of the time, which is why we have an electoral college, by the way. Not that that's going to do us any good necessarily this year. We can hope. So it can be tough, right? You got people like Anthony Fauci saying, hey, now's the time to do what you're told. How about that Fauci does what he's told? How about our governors and county executives do what they're told by our Constitution? But they don't do what they're told to do by our Constitution. They do what they want. And what they want is to tell you to mind them. They'll be taken out back and whooped with a leather strap or something. The left, and boy, this is, the left is your enemy. But here's the thing. We're to love our enemy. So you got to get both of those right. You got to recognize those who are the propagandists and who are buying into and supporting, either supporting directly or supporting by refusing to fight against the propaganda, they are your enemy. But we're to love our enemy. You got to get both of them right. You have to recognize who is an advocate for truth. Anybody who advocates for a lie is an enemy. But those who advocate for truth are your friend, and you should cherish them. But even those who disagree and are an enemy to your neighbor and to your family and to your friends and to your colleagues, you are to love them. And you might feel like you're all alone in taking your stand for truth and justice, but you have to remember, 8 people got on the ark. 4 people escaped Sodom and Gomorrah. Only David stood against Goliath. Only Elijah stood against the prophets of Baal. And so on. Be an ambassador for truth. It can get lonely, but being a part of the heavenly minority is worth it all in the end. Until we meet again, God bless.
Past editions of this program are available in the audio vault at WFMD.
Anybody who was watching, thank you for watching, and I'll post this on YouTube maybe later today if I have time. All right? God bless you.